Tonight on the Daily Debrief, a friend says a deadly stabbing at a Florida stop sign may have begun with a beef at a party. An injured Supreme Court justice is back at work. And celebrity legal news surrounds divorce. That's straight ahead on the Daily Debrief for Friday, November 9th. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Debrief this Friday. Let's head straight to court tonight, where in Florida, defendant Armando Baptista faces manslaughter charges in what's been described as a road rage stabbing incident. Victim Fakardine Knight, who went by the nickname Mohammed, and his girlfriend, Wendy Gambolas, left a party one night. Now, at a stop sign, a car driven by defendants Armando Baptista and Demetrius Elder would not budge from that stop sign. Knight honked his car horn, then got out of his car when the car in front of him didn't move. What happened next is a big he said, she said, but it resulted in Knight being stabbed and killed. Prosecutors originally sought murder charges against both Demetrius Elder and Armando Baptista, but they later downgraded those charges to manslaughter. The jury here in the Demetrius Elder trial acquitted Elder of the top charge. They instead convicted him of the lesser included charge of culpable negligence. That's a misdemeanor carrying up to 1 year in jail. In court today in the new trial, a friend of the victims testified about what occurred at the party where the defendants and the victim were present. This all happened before that stabbing at the stop sign. At one point here, you'll hear the judge ask for a proffer. That's where the jury is excused to clear up an evidence issue.
Regular thing? Is this a special event? Why are people there?
Regular thing.
So every Friday night everybody hangs out at Corey's?
Yes, ma'am.
You just kind of show up?
Yeah, because like we cool with his dad too. His dad is a senior citizen, but he's real cool.
Describe to me what you're looking at as you see Mohammed walk over to Armando. What is his physical kind of demeanor?
It was more peripheral because I was speaking to a young lady at the time, so I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. I kind of had an idea in my mind of what was going on, but I really wasn't. It wasn't my concern too much, so I wasn't really paying attention. But I seen him over there, and if I was focusing on it, then I probably would have knew what they was talking about. But I honestly wasn't. I was just really wasn't paying attention to them.
I'm going to ask for a proffer here.
Now, had I not been paying attention to her, and like I would assume that he was going up there to him to talk to him about why he punched Walter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what you thought was happening.
Yeah. If I was, assuming, I would think that's what it was, but I honestly didn't really care.
Now, did you see Corey point out Armando to Mohammed? If you answered that question, what would your answer have been?
There was no pointing involved.
Okay. Did he make him aware?
Yes.
Okay, some of that testimony you just heard was in front of the jury. Some of it was ultimately presented to the jury after that proffer we talked about. The defense is trying to link this stabbing at the stop sign to the altercation back at the party where everyone was hanging out earlier that night. But yesterday, the victim's girlfriend suggested that the stop sign stabbing started off solely as a casual encounter.
What is Mohammed doing besides talking? What do you see him do?
He's holding his little red Solo cup in his right hand.
Do you see him take any drinks of his red Solo cup? Do you know if he was holding it on the top of the cup?
No, ma'am, in the middle.
In the middle. After they're talking for a little bit, what happens next?
Mohammed switches the Solo cup from his right hand to his left. And he extends his right hand out and downward, and that's when the passenger threw a punch. Now they're up against the car, then they're in the car. The passenger's on his back. The passenger winds up inside, laying on his back. Mohammed's on top of him. I start walking towards the car. The driver gets out, comes walking around the back of the car, looks at me, and yells, "You better come get your man." I go walking up to the car, shaking my head, because at this point I think, they're fighting for no reason.
Did Mohammed have a weapon with him?
No. not at all.
Did you have any weapons in your car?
No, ma'am. And I'm pulling at the back of his shirt. I said, baby, come on, we gotta go see Mom.
And what does he say to you at that point?
He turns his head towards the left and he screams, he's got a knife.
And from there, that girlfriend's testimony turned to the bloody stabbing itself.
I was like, baby, he got the knife, come on, let's go.
Are they tussling? Are they still in the seat?
They're still in the seat. I pulled him up.
What did you see?
I saw red blood from his chest all the way down to his pants. My first reaction was get him away from these fools. The driver was standing to my left. The passenger was standing to Muhammad's right.
Okay. How did they get out of the car?
When I pulled Muhammad up, I guess the passenger got up with him. I was not paying attention. I was more worried about Muhammad. I grabbed Muhammad's wrist with his left wrist with my right hand. I said, come on, baby, let's go. I took 2 steps forward, and that's when they both started kicking and punching him, or what I called wailing on him.
Criminal defense attorney Marni Snyder is with us tonight on the debrief. Marni, it seems the defense is really trying to paint a picture here which conflicts with the testimony of the girlfriend. Now, if the defense can raise reasonable doubt about what the girlfriend says, would you agree that the state's case falls apart at that point?
Yes, I think it turns a lot on the girlfriend. She is the one that's saying who is the aggressor and who's not the aggressor, that her boyfriend was just giving a gentlemanly gesture of a handshake, and that these men not only stabbed him, but once they knew he was bleeding all over himself, kicked him and pummeled him on the ground. That shows a lot of intent to kill, and that's exactly what the defense is trying to negate.
So the defense is trying to paint this as a completely different scenario that started back at the party, and that the stop sign was just a continuation of whatever this beef was that happened back at the party. Another subject I wanted to ask you about here, the medical examiner testified this afternoon. He brought a lot of graphic photos with him from the autopsy. That led to a lot of objections. There was a lengthy break in court. What's your analysis of that?
The defense was arguing which photos were both cumulative, meaning the facts that they're trying to elicit from those photos can already be brought out in a different photo. And the reason that they're arguing that is because some are more prejudicial than others. So one big topic was a picture of during the autopsy was taken a picture where there's medical intervention, meaning there's tubes and things coming out of the body that really just makes it grotesque, but have nothing to do with how the crime was committed or what was going on. And so the defense was seeking to keep those out because they would really just cause emotion that didn't have to do with any of the evidence that was coming in at trial.
Okay, Marni, we'll check in with you in a minute here. The victim's girlfriend said Mohammed Knight took a red Solo cup out of the car and then he went to talk with the men who wouldn't budge at the stop sign. A number of officers who were at the scene said they never saw a red cup anywhere, but this next officer we'll listen to said he did find one the next day. Here was both direct and cross-examination. Apparently we can't show you that one, so let's move along to the next one here. One key point for the defense is the presence of a beer bottle at the crime scene. The defendant said he was stuck with that, and that's why he fought back. The victim's girlfriend said nothing about it. The defense asked police many questions about how it was tested for DNA, fingerprints, and the presence of blood. So, Marni, let's go back to you here about a couple of these points. There's a lot of issues surrounding this Solo cup. There are a lot of issues about prints on the beer bottle and exactly what the police tested and when they tested them. So the defense is really poking a lot of holes in this theory that the authorities have tried to put together based on the words of the girlfriend. I want to know the results of some of this testing on some of these key items.
That's exactly what the defense is hoping the jury wants to know. is if you could have made this case solid against our client, why didn't you? And is there something either nefarious, lazy about that? And could this evidence have exonerated our client? Does that produce a reasonable doubt in the jury? So that's always interesting.
Yeah, I think testimony is actually continuing in this case right now, Marni. So we're going to dip in and listen to a little bit of what's happening in court live right now in Florida.
Okay, this statement is being taken in reference to Miramar Police Department case number 1404-05020, which pertains to an incident that occurred on April 25th, 2014, and resulted in the death of Mr. Bakaraji Muhammad Knight. For the record, I am a sworn police officer and work for the City Attorney's Office here in Broward County. Do you understand that person who knowingly makes a false statement to a law enforcement officer while under oath is subject to charges of perjury?
Yes.
Okay. All right, please raise your right hand, sir. Okay, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
So help you God?
Yes.
Okay, for the record, you raised your hand. Okay, can you just, you said you wanted to come here to give your side of what happened on that night. Can you just take us back to how it all happened? Maybe start earlier in the day, how you ended up? Okay.
I ended up over Corey's house because I went there to go meet my brother a lot. I didn't know there was people going to be back there. I was just hanging with a couple of friends. I hadn't seen my brother-in-law in a week, so I went there to go.
What's your brother-in-law's name?
Marni Williams. And me and Demetrius, we went over there. I don't remember what time that was. When we got there people there. And so happened to be Corey's birthday a couple of days later, so people was there. And I went and I said.
Okay, folks, we were listening to the beginning of what's looking like it's going to be an interrogation recording of the defendant himself in the Armando Baptista case. Marni Jo Snyder, we were starting to say there, the defense is really building a case of incomplete or shoddy police work here. I want to know what some of these tests reveal. Now I want to know what this interrogation is going to show. Is the interrogation going to seal this up for the state?
It's possible if the interrogation really contradicts the way that the defense is now presenting the story, that could be a serious problem for them. But it's not the be-all, end-all. They will have to remind the jury how high the burden of proof is in this case, and that the prosecution always has the burden of the case beyond a reasonable doubt. This is definitely something to look for, especially if it might wrap up some of the questions that we have from the police work.
And we have many of them. Marni Jo Snyder, a criminal defense attorney, really appreciate your insight on the Daily Debrief. We'll catch you some other time.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Let's move along now to other cases we're following here on the Daily Debrief. Nicholas Godejohn is scheduled to go to trial next week in Missouri on first-degree murder charges related to the death of his online girlfriend's mother. The victim, 48-year-old Claudine Dee Blanchard, died in 2015. Her daughter, seen here with her, Gypsy Blanchard, already pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. The daughter is serving a 10-year sentence. Prosecutors went soft on her, they said, because her mother had abused her. Court documents say Nicholas Godejohn killed Dee Blanchard after Gypsy Blanchard handed him gloves and a knife. Authorities say the couple bragged about how he committed the crime on Facebook. The case was the subject of an HBO documentary. The defense might be in trouble in a Florida case set for trial next month. Denise Williams is accused there of plotting to murder her husband with a man with whom she was having an affair. Prosecutors are furious about a telephone survey commissioned by the defense. The survey sought information about whether people had already made up their minds about the case. The problem is that if people didn't know much about the case, the survey went on to give people details in phone calls. The prosecution accused the defense of trying to poison the jury pool in hopes of obtaining a change in venue. An update tonight on that shooting in California, which left a dozen people dead at a country and western hangout. Authorities in Ventura County say Marine Corps veteran Ian David Long of Newberry Park, California, killed himself when officers confronted him. The local sheriff says Long had previously been examined for mental health issues, but that Long was not committed against his will to a mental hospital. That is because the people who reviewed his case didn't believe he met the legal criteria for involuntary commitment. Despite that, today President Trump said in his words that the shooter was a sick puppy and a very mentally ill person. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is home from the hospital after breaking 3 ribs in a fall in her office. The fall occurred Wednesday evening, resulting in a Thursday hospitalization. Tests confirmed 3 fractured ribs. Justice Ginsburg spent the day working from home, the court reported today. Ginsburg broke 2 ribs in 2012 but didn't disclose that injury right away. She also had been previously treated for cancer and once required a stent in an artery. The 85-year-old Ginsburg says she plans to work until she's 90. Still ahead tonight on the Daily Debrief, contrasting cases of celebrity divorce. When it comes to Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, custody issues are getting uglier and uglier. But another celeb couple seems to have settled their disputes much more agreeably. That's after the break here on the Daily Debrief. Welcome back to the Daily Debrief, folks. Time now for an update on some other incidents making headlines. Here is Anthony Velez. Okay, folks, sorry about that. We're going to move along here. It is Friday, and perhaps you've been thinking of heading to the movies tonight or this weekend. But before you do that, it's our chance to check in with what legal troubles have foiled the heroes of Hollywood. Jill Stanley is here for that. Jill, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
And I know, of course, the surfboard is there, so you're reminding us that you're on the West Coast, and
Yes.
It's not surfing weather here in New York. But the news of the week with celebrity legal issues surrounds divorce.
Yeah. We got 2 power couples that are just over, and one has ended kind of nicely, and one is not ending nicely at all.
So what's happening here? We've got Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Take us through that one.
So the Brad Pitt Angelina Jolie thing kind of took the world by surprise when they separated, and it all erupted over this fight, allegedly, that Brad had with their oldest son, Maddox. And since then, basically communication ended between Angelina and Brad. You never see anything. You don't see them going to any services together. You don't see them on holiday together. You don't see them with the kids together, unlike other celebrity couples who have broken up. This was a very, very strict line breakup, and it is all over the kids, allegedly. So what's going on here is that initially this couple said, hey, you know what? We recognize we are celebrities. We recognize people want to know about our lives. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep this divorce, this custody, visitation, whatever has to do with this family, out of the public eye. Everything's going to be hired by a private judge. It's going to go away nice and quietly. We're going to agree and move on and keep our kids safe. And that was the intention initially. However, this summer, things really erupted. All bets were off when Angelina claimed that Brad had not paid any meaningful child support, which is a very interesting thing given how wealthy these 2 actors are. I mean, we are not dealing with, these are A-listers. These are the top of the food chain. Their net worth is somewhere between $60 and $120 million each. It is actually, you know what? I think it's actually double that. I think it's $120 and $250 million each for these 2 people, respectively. So you wonder what the big deal is with child support for Angelina Jolie. But she is entitled to it. The kids are entitled to it. And she is concerned about it. So concerned that she has brought it back into the court system. And these 2 people cannot resolve the differences for the children, meaning they cannot come up with a custody agreement. They cannot come up with a support agreement. So now there's actually a court date for these 2 and their 6 kids. So Angelina wants sole custody. Brad is okay with joint custody. Do I think in a month from now this whole thing is going to play out in a court of law in LA? No, I do not. I think ultimately this is going to go back into the hands of a private judge. I really think that this family is, at the end of the day, very, very private. And Angelina is really not going to want all their dirty laundry out there, and she is very protected. fiercely protective of these kids. So even though she's playing hardball right now and she really wants sole custody, this is not, I would be shocked if this played out in a court of law.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of rare here. So she doesn't want it to play out in a court of law, though. Why did she drag it back there in the first place, other than to sort of like, you know, throw this thing back in the limelight? And what's she trying to do? Say in the court of public opinion that Brad Pitt is wrong for asking for joint custody? I mean, would anybody...
Actually, if I may, I don't think that Angelina plays the game of the court of public opinion. There are facts here we do not know. There is some stuff hanging out in this marriage, in this family dynamic, that are so significant to Angelina that she does not want Brad to have custody of these kids. So this is why I think ultimately everybody's going to dial it back, and it's going to go back to a private situation. I think there is big stuff that's going on in that household, or that has gone on in that household.
Well, that's certainly speculatory, but you have your sources that I don't have because I don't follow this as closely as you do. So what about the Jennifer Garner-Ben Affleck thing? I know that you've said before that that is a model of how this could proceed without as many bumps in the road, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's been a perfect example of how A-listers can resolve their differences in a celebrity breakup with custody as a big issue. But you have to also understand that this works, this model of kind of a very peaceful resolution, amicable resolution, only works if the parties are super reasonable and are open to it. And that's not to say that Angelina is not reasonable. It's just that there are facts there that we really do not know about, and they could be rather dramatic. Jennifer handled things very differently in that they slowed down the divorce proceeding to allow Ben to get treatment for his alcoholism. That's her number one thing. Again, we have two heavy hitters, lots of money around, money not an issue. And he's also really known to be a good dad. She likes him as a dad to her three kids. She trusts him with their three kids, but she's worried about his addiction and his behavior when he is drinking. And that was what was kind of stopping this whole thing. So I think once Ben showed he was really committed to getting better when he went to rehab, that's when the wheels started moving more quickly. And this couple used the very famous lawyer, Laura Wasser, who, by the way, was Angelina's lawyer. Angelina and Laura Wasser parted ways. But Laura Wasser is very well known for mediating and coming up with good recommendations and good agreements that people can live by. She's not known to fight these things in the courts of law in front of everyone.
So this one, yeah, so this one can roll along much more amicably, one could say. Jill Stanley, appreciate you joining us again with the Celebrity Debrief on the Daily Debrief.
Yes, thanks, Aaron. Have a great weekend.
Okay, take care. You too. We are going to wrap things up for the day and for the week here on the Daily Debrief on the Law&Crime Network. A reminder that the Law&Crime Network will be streaming many of the cases we discussed, including the Go to John case and the Armando Baptista case, beginning on Monday when we come back here on the network. We'll see you next week.